Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the great debate between the Australian Labor Party and the Australian Liberal Party. It's the first time that we have the pleasure of welcoming representatives from the major parties in Australia to this program. Can I start by first introducing our guest today? Firstly, Andrew Nguyễn, accountant. Please put your hands together for Andrew Nguyễn. Chris is a very familiar face with the Vietnamese community, member for Fowler. Please put your hands together for Chris. Councillor Toàn, who is also a solicitor and a former Vice President of the Vietnamese community in New South Wales. Please applause, give Toàn an applause. Davy, current President, Vice President for Planning of the Vietnamese community in New South Wales. Big hands for Davy. And Greg Kelly, second time, welcoming Greg Kelly, member for Hughes, federal member for Hughes. Last but not least, Paul Huy Nguyen, accountant, a very familiar face in the Vietnamese community, a person who's been making active contribution to the Vietnamese community. Please put your hands together for Paul Huy Nguyen. All right, I'll start on the right-hand side. First, why should the Vietnamese community in particular, and also in general, why should people be supporting Labor? I'll throw it over to this side. Maybe I'll ask Chris to start.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that question. I fortunately actually represent one of the most largest Vietnamese community in the whole of Australia. Matter of fact, only the last day and two I was down in Melbourne talking to the Vietnamese youth conference. So one of the things that came out of that is the issues that are really associated with not only young Vietnamese but Vietnamese community generally. One of the things I guess that I have only come to this electorate in 2010, so I've had to learn a lot about this community. And the way I sought to do that is not try and get out and ram politics down their throat, but go out and engage with the local people and listen to what they want. The other thing I also did is recruit Vietnamese people into my office. So to ensure that people, when they've got an issue, they don't have to have an interpreter service tell me what their issue is. They can come and have their matters dealt with directly. And I've got to say that doing business that way has allowed me to get very close to the Vietnamese people as to what they need, what their desires are, and particularly it gets down to issues, particularly health and education. There is no community that I've ever come to deal with that is more passionate about education than the Vietnamese community. They know what's the difference between success and otherwise in a country like Australia is ensuring that their children have the best access to education. And that's one of the things I think that's pretty powerful in this community. The other thing I've come to understand, the Vietnamese community is just so well represented throughout every area of our professions, whether it's engineering, law, medicine, finance. And part of the reason for that is, and as I just spoke to the conference, youth conference the other day, it probably gets back to their their parents' passion for education. So look, I have actually worked very hard because I'm clearly not Vietnamese. I've worked very hard to actually get close to my community, understand what it is they truly want, and to try and service their needs. Now, I just think in our democracy, that's why we should go about doing business. And for me, as I say, I represent the largest Vietnamese community in the whole of Australia. And I think that's the best way of getting out, is engaging and showing people that you care.
Great.
So can I...
No, well, you take your turn later. Yes.
That's fine.
I think that there's a very close alignment between the Vietnamese community and the values and principles that we believe in the Liberal Party. Most of Australia's Vietnamese community actually fled a communist regime. They fled because they want greater opportunity, not only for themselves, but for their children and their grandchildren. They want increased prosperity. They want the opportunity to own their own business, to own property. And these are core fundamental principles of the Liberal Party that I belong to. I've met many Vietnamese people. The one thing I've found, they have an entrepreneurial culture that has added to this country enormously. And our Liberal philosophy is to foster that entrepreneurial culture, to allow it to thrive, to make sure that with family at the principle of our society, family groups, I believe that's the true way that's the best for our society. And as I said, our Liberal Party philosophy, I think, aligns very closely with that of the Vietnamese community here in Australia today.
You've got another 2 minutes.
Look, can I just say, look, I came to Australia 36 years ago. First, I joined the party almost 30 years. The party, the Liberal Party, representative of freedom of choice, the freedom, support enterprise, support value, provide incentive, provide opportunity. We are the party providing platform for economic growth, for prosperity. We just don't give, we don't give handout, but we always to give opportunity. We give people, we teach people how to fish, not to give them fish. That's the fundamental value of Liberal, and Liberal is representative of the prosperity of this nation. So I'm inspired by Menzies, the great leaders of Liberal. So I feel that, you know, freedom of choices, people have choices to create opportunity. The government provide incentive for us to prosper.
30 seconds.
30 seconds,
And then you'll have your turn again. Come on, quick.
Look, at the end of the day, I think the Liberal stands for a lot of, I guess, in terms of values. The Liberal have always been there to support immigrations and refugees like myself. There's a lot of misconception now in the community that the Liberal are against refugees, and I just want to clarify something, that's incorrect. The Liberal also, we encourage entrepreneurship, and that's something that a lot of Vietnamese people have in their spirit. You know, they escape a war-torn country, they come to Australia, they want to have a good life, they want to contribute to Australia, and in return, they also create jobs, create business. And these small businesses out there are all hardworking people that actually give employment to the unemployed who don't have a job.
Thank you, Dave. I'll come back to you. Toàn.
I joined the Labor Party. It's very simple. My family came to Australia as a refugee, and my father and mother were cleaners for many years to support us. And I believe that Labor is a core to support Australian people, especially the working class, to keep Australia fair, to keep the benefit share among all the people within Australia, not just those who are the privileged or those who are well educated, because we all know people have barriers, and therefore with the role of the government is to share those benefits around. Now unfortunately it's the fact that people are not the same. People who goes to school, but they might not have the ability to go to school or to advance in terms of education. Therefore, they need the assistance and good policy from government to assist those people. And you can see it through Labor's policy, health, education.
You know, for me, I feel that the Vietnamese community just arrived in Australia for a very short of time. We are behind the other communities in terms of unemployment, in terms of education, and then look at the way the government policy and value. The government believed, the Labour Party believed that the government should be a positive force in order to intervene in the community and in the economy in order to apply the fairness to everyone. So because of that value, of that philosophy, the Labour Party embraced the Gonski reform, which helped, and the Gonski said that every children should have the best possible education, regardless of where do they live and where do the parents, the level of income their parents is, and which school they go to. So because of that, I think that the Labour Party going to give good opportunity for the children in the suburbs of Kalamata and Bangsar. And you know, I travel along the country and I realize that the suburb of Kalamata and Bangsar, which I represent, is a bit behind compared to the other suburbs. So we need, the Labour Party also support fairness in health and education and public social security service. That all give a chance to Vietnamese to catch up with the other community. I don't mean that Kalamata and Bangsar should be treated differently from the other part of the country, but unless the Kalamata suburbs prosper, unless Australian proper unless the Karamata prosper together with the other community.
Thank you. I think that's it's a very good introduction by both sides. I've got on top of my list here Medicare co-payment, which I think is a very important policy. And since we do have quite a number of seniors in the audience, Greg, can I on this side can I invite one of you to?
Sure. Firstly, before we explain the policy, we need to understand the background problems that we have. In this country, we get a Medicare card, and that basically entitles us to get medical treatment in many cases for free in the past. But nothing is for free. Someone ultimately has to pay for it. Now, going back about a decade or more ago, the average Australian used their Medicare card about 4 times a year. Last year, that was 11 times a year. The growth that we have, we simply are unable to continue to afford the amount that we're spending on Medicare. That amount, as our population ages, is set to explode. Now, we can't keep borrowing money, creating debt for our children to pay off, to pay for our healthcare costs today. We have to pay for it. So what the Coalition's proposal is to have a $7 payment that would cost you to go to the doctors. So you would pay $7, the government would pay the other $35. That would get you into the doctors. Plus there are a lot of safety nets and thresholds. If you're a pensioner or a child, the maximum that you would have to pay would be 10 times a year, which would be $70. So yes, we understand it's an impost. We wish we didn't have to do it. But we have to deal with the budgetary and fiscal situation that we find ourselves in, and we have to make sure that in the future that we can continue to provide Medicare to the less off and the needy. That is what this is all about.
Okay. Look, I think Medicare co-payment is a step that the government must have, because whenever it's free, people start to have abuse. People keep using unnecessary service. So one way to deter that is to introduce a co-payment. Co-payment $7. You know, a lot of critics will say, "Oh, $7 could stop people going to doctor." No, you don't think so. It's a 2 coffee. $7 is a must, because we cannot spend our way. We cannot build up our deficit. We have to reduce the debt. And one of the budgetary measurement is to reduce health costs. Health costs going up 5 or 6% a year. Yet our revenue base collapsing. So we must have, and health cost is about 16% of total budget. We have to reduce the cost. And $7 co-payment, $5 of that go to the medical research. So therefore, the medical research is an investment. So therefore, we reduce the spending, divert the spending, go to the investment for future generation. This is how the liberal philosophy is all about.
Please.
Well, I think you've got to be honest in this debate. The truth is, the Labor Party introduced Medicare some 30 years ago, and it's only the Labor Party that's actually fighting for it now. Medicare, this is a first step by the Liberal campaign to unravel universal health care in this country. And when this whole notion about they're going to tax sick people to go to a doctor. Now, I've got a mother who's a pensioner. I take her to the doctor. I know how many times I've got to do that. I also know how many times I've got to change her medicine. I'm not sure the people on the other side understand this, but the thing is also they're going to tax sick people to pay for medical research into the future. Research that's going to be done in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. I just don't get it. How can you have a situation, this is not changing the budget, Paul. This is actually putting a tax on sick people to pay for future medical research. Medical research is great. Taxpayers should pay for it. We should all invest in research. You don't tax sick people to pay for medical research for the future.
Look, what I would like to add is Australia have a great system. We all pay tax. Tax is it comes into a general coffin where we share it around. We share it evenly to the people. And talking about Medicare, all I want to give you an example is we're in winter at the moment. Okay, we're in winter right now. All right, a family of 4, if they're hit by a flu, all right, for this week, if they need to go to the doctor for the 4 of them, that's $28. If my math is correct, $28 extra on a week. That's all I want to say, and I will leave it like that.
Right of reply.
I disagree with Chris. This is not a tax. It's a reduction of the subsidies. When you go to the doctor here in Australia, if you are what's called bulk billed, you pay nothing. Someone has to pay that amount. At the moment, the government is paying the full amount. What we're asking people is to contribute just $7, and I understand that is an impost, but we simply cannot give away everything for free. There has to be some type of costs on some things. And it also should be noted that the Labor government, under Bob Hawke, actually brought this in and proposed this to have a co-payment for Medicare when you go to the doctors. It's something we wish we didn't have to do. But we live in the real world where things cost money, and you just cannot give everything away for free.
Can I just add to that?
We'll just come back to you later, Chris. Paul?
People got to remember that every time you go to a doctor, a fellow citizen, a fellow Australian citizen paying for that services. So Medicare or universal healthcare system is a place. And in order to sustain our health system, we must do something. We must reduce it to a sustainable level. We cannot continue to spend and increase the level and have the increment year after year without collecting revenue to subsidize and keep it sustainable for the future.
Can I add something to that debate, Chris? I totally agree with you that Australia, we have a very aging population. The Medicare system has been around for such a long time. In its time, it worked fine. However,
But the Liberals opposed it.
However, currently, I think a lot of people are abusing this system, and it's one of the most costly.
I disagree with that.
I
disagree with that.
Eventually,
why would people want to go to the...
Put it this way, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example.
30 seconds. You have 30 seconds.
Let me give you an example. If anything that's free, people always go back for more and more. If you cut your little fingers, they will go and see a doctor. That's my point.
You need to wind up,
My point
Davy.
is that the system there was
You need
free,
to wind up.
but people are abusing the system, so therefore the government have stepped in to try to cut the costs.
Thank you. Okay, Chris, now you can have your turn. Chris.
If
Andrew.
you ask the people to contribute $7 per patient per time, why don't we put that sum of money into the health fund to give more money to the hospital? At the moment, I understand that the Albert government going to cut support to the health fund, to the public hospital. Why don't we put that money to the hospital? And the other thing I know is that some people of the research area, they say that when you put money into the research, Paul, the research money can go everywhere. It doesn't matter how much money to put in, that you do the use. I think, and better, in the future, what kind of project you're doing with the future to research fund? Is that the kind of research for the benefit of the rich people or the benefit of the common older Australian people? What is the question we would like to ask, because we'd like to know exactly what the future health fund going to use for. Who is going to allocate that money to what research, and which company going to time to get that money?
You got 1 minute?
Just very quickly, Paul made the issue about needing to cut payments into health, and the Liberal government is actually doing that. In terms of health and education, the Liberal government is taking $80 billion out of the system over the next 10 years. And you don't have to accept my view of that. The Premier of New South Wales, Michael Baird, he actually came out and said that this was a kick in the guts for New South Wales. You had the Premier of Queensland coming out and cutting services in Queensland and saying the reason why he's done it because the Commonwealth government, the Abbott government, has cut health and education. So look, this is just a matter of fact. So if you think about the $7 co-payment, what this is going to do, it's going to tax obviously sick people, particularly the elderly, particularly those on some form of benefits, but families. And as one paediatrician put to me, if you've got a child that's got a high temperature, runny nose and all the rest of it, you might think twice whether you take the child to the doctor. It may not be the flu, it might be meningitis, and that's a death sentence.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Toàn, later. I want to move on to the next topic, which is associated with Medicare as well, and that is the age pension. Obviously, there are some concerns about the recent budget that's got to do with the age pension, so great if you can explain.
Firstly, just as I get on to the age pension, it's very important for people on the age pension to understand that there's actually no cuts to health. The facts are that this financial year, the Commonwealth Government is spending 9% more than what was spent last year. Next year, we will spend 9% more again. And the following year, it will be 9% more on top of that.
But not what we
so
promised.
we are seeing a 36% increase in health spending over the next 3 years. And we are doing that at the same time as trying to reduce the budget deficit. Now, what Chris talks about is some pie-in-the-sky spending that Labor promised, all on borrowed money.
No, that's untrue. I recommend you read the Sydney Morning Herald today.
We cannot finance our medical spending today by stealing from our children and by running up government debt. It is an absolute fact that we are increasing health spending in this country by 9%. And we're trying to do that in a very difficult and tight budgetary situation. Now, when it comes to the pension, again, we have to explain what the nature of the problem is. The problem is we have an ageing population. At the moment, it's about 5 people in the workforce of working age for 1 person over 65. By the year 2050, that will be down to 2.4 people in the workforce for 1 person over 65. It's great, but that's happened because we're having a less birth rate and we're having success in the medical field where people are living longer. We simply are not going to have the financial resources in this nation, and that is why we are increasing the pension age. Now, the previous government increased the pension age to 67. We're increasing the age to 70, but that doesn't kick in until 2035. So it's a long way off.
30
it
seconds.
gives people a long time to plan with superannuation planning. This is not something that should have a lot of adverse effect on people, because we're doing it over many years, allowing people to plan for this increase because we simply have to, because the budgetary situation we face demands that we do.
Yeah, Toàn, Chris on this side.
So
Come
can
back
I
to
just
you.
say, I don't know with all your viewers may have read the Sydney Morning Herald today. It had a survey there of the 25 top economists in the country, from banking institutions, financial institutions, from universities. All but one said there was no government emergency, budget emergency in this country. So all this stuff that the Abbott government goes off, all this goes off is just hyperbole. And by the way, and even the state premier said not once did the Abbott government raise the issue about their cuts before at the last Chogman conference, or the last heads of government conference rather. So before they made these cuts. So this is, and when you're talking about pensioners, this is not just about going to age 70, in which I've got to question the reason for doing that and not telling anyone about it or producing any evidence, but they're changing the way they index pension indexation into the future. They're going to use it on the basis of changing it to the indexation to the CPI rate, as opposed to a rate which is linked to wages growth. So it means pension growth will be at a lot lower rate than it once was. So, matter of fact, if they use the same rate over the last 5 years, pensions now would be $1,500 a year less. So, look, they are making cuts to pensions. Make no mistake about that. And when you add on to that, pensioners paying the GP tax, when they fill their car up, they're paying a new tax on petrol. Pensioners are doing it tough. They only exist now on $20,000 a year, and these people think they're going to make it harder for them to actually by lowering the rate of their indexation.
Look, I believe the policy that the current government is putting in place at the moment, specifically to the pension and the pension age, is to modify our social security system, especially to the pension age. The reason being is I can't see how people can work up to the age of 70, especially at least more than 50% of our workforce are in physical work. They're doing physical work. How can they? I was talking to a fire person the other day. It was a lady. She goes, look, I'm in my 40s. I expect to retire very soon. But how can a firefighter work up until the age of 70? I can't just. I can't see that. Back to the Medicare that I want to raise earlier. Tax is a tax. Tax come in different forms, okay? So when you say $7 paid extra on top currently is not a tax, I disagree with that totally. Because anything that the government tax in, it is a form of a tax, okay? I can see that. Now you said that it's abusive to go to the doctor. Why would people want to go to see a doctor for? They only go to see a doctor when they are sick, okay? They only go to see a doctor if they need their advice. So for you to say, oh, there are 11 people on average going to the doctor a year, that could be correct, but that could be a different age bracket. That could be an age bracket of, say, pensioners or people in a young age or whatever, but I don't think it's a general figure for the whole population.
Reply. Okay.
Can I just go back to the age pension? $40 billion a year That's the budget for the age pension. If the way we continue to going down with the age pension entitlement or welfare, let's go to $70 billion for the next 10 years. We talk about sustainability here. Sustainability is that we're going to look after our budget in order to continue to provide our pensioners. So we got to make sure that if we don't do something now, we are not going to have the money to pay for any pensioners. So therefore, just go back to the business of, we are telling people, you can retire whatever age you like, but the government will only subsidize you in the age of 70, 2035. We're letting people know nearly 2 decades before we're going to do it. But what we are signaling to the people is that, hang on a minute, we cannot spend the way we spend now. Because if we do that, then we have no money to provide anybody.
See,
we have no access to healthcare, age pension, and everyone will be stuck.
Chris, you're going to get your turn later.
See,
Okay.
the Liberal, we have an economic plan and strategy in place to get Australia back on track.
What track? What
Okay.
track? We are on track.
Well,
Let him
we're
have his go.
talking about throwing monies away.
Now, I think we should listen to this one.
Okay, we're talking
I
about.
reckon we're going to have a go at it.
Are you not recording me? eh?
Come on, Davy.
Look,
Come on.
what we're trying to say is we need to get our finance in order, and we need to live within our means. If we don't do that, there is not enough money there to subsidise to look after Australia for the next 5, 10, 15 years down the track.
Well, nobody's subsidising Australia. Australia is actually paying
Chris,
its
we're
way.
in debt.
The
We're,
way
in debt.
we're
If
borrowing
I'm-
Yeah.
billions of dollars
Can I
every
just-
month.
We're paying
Can I
$1
just
billion a month in
indicate-
Okay.
interest
Can I just
alone.
Let
indicate
him
that
have his turn
if
then.
you
Okay.
read that Sydney Morning Herald today, look, Craig, I don't know, you're many things, but I don't think you're one of the country's leading economists.
Well, Chris,
24 of them out of 25
You've misread
said
the
that we
article.
did not have a
misread
debt
the
issue.
article.
And while we're
That's not what
retiring,
they
while
said.
we're retiring
That's not
debt, what they said is the biggest issue this country's got is maintaining economic growth. And leading up to the last election, the FIFO documents, which is the pre-election fiscal outlook document, indicated a growth rate of 3.5%. And I know the Liberal Party said, now that's just not true, it can't be true. And you know what happened when they produced the actual growth rate only 2 months ago? It was 3.5%. We have a debt ratio of 14% to our GDP compared to OECD nations, which is 75%. We have low interest rate. We have a continuing employment growth, and this is a country that's moving forward. Now, for all these ones who want to sit on this side and want to belittle the contribution that Australia makes, I'd say, you've got to actually question, their values. This is not about, as Dewey said, about paying for subsidising the country. We are paying our way. Our country is growing. Compared to the OECD nations, we have a significant growth rate. And what the economists all said, Craig, and as you read the article, I hope, what they did say, the biggest thing for Australia at this stage is investing in research and education to help trigger growth for the future.
One
now,
minute.
that's something your government is not doing.
1
You know,
minute.
the way Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey say in the budget that we go in to rescue the Australian economy. But if I agree with that, why don't you share the burden equally with our people? It seems to me that in order to save the budget, you put the burden on the low and middle income family. You cut the family tax benefits, you cut the pension, you cut the education, the health fund, all that, and I don't think anything you touch with the higher income people, any kind of tax. You
30
include the
seconds.
Medicare.
They
You know,
introduce
the whole majority
He's got
of
30
the people
seconds.
in
He's got 30
Karamata,
seconds.
Bank South, doing manual work. I can think that the person who work in the office can continue to work until 70 years old, but people in the factory, in the manual work, people in Bank South and Karamata won't be able to do a manual work until they reach 70 years old. So they've been paying
Why
tax
not?
for the whole year. When can they earn the pension that they're entitled to? That is the question I would like to ask you.
Thank
Why
you.
don't you share the burden equally
thank you,
between
Andrew.
all classes of people? Why don't you put the burden
Thank you.
on the
Your-
low and middle income?
Your reply to that, but I would also like to move on to the next topic, which is a closely related topic, or the social issues, which is education. I've got a question here on education, in particular university and TAFE. So if you give a reply to what Andrew was saying and also address your position on education as well.
First on education. the idea that there's cuts is complete rubbish. This
That's right,
financial
it
year,
doesn't.
the spending on education, as Chris well knows, increases 8%. Next year, it increases a further 8%. The year after, it increases a further 8%. We are putting record amounts of money into education. Now, what we're doing in universities, we want to have as many Australians as possible to have the opportunity, because that is our core Liberal philosophy, to give opportunity to as many Australians as possible. So we want to give that opportunity to give more people to get into university. And under Christopher Pyne's plan, that will be 80,000 more Australians that will be able to get into university.
If they could pay.
Now, what we are
If
doing,
they could
well,
pay.
that's the point.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay. You get into university in this country without paying 1 single cent up front. And you know what? The taxpayer, under the changes we're going to make, at the moment, the taxpayer pays on average about 60% of your university cost. The student only pays 40. We think that it should be about a 50-50 split, and that's what the changes will make it. So someone going to university, they'll end up paying 50% of their course without 1 cent up front, and they'll be able to borrow that money from the government and only pay it back at the CPI rate.
No.
Now, yeah, that's
One
right.
minute.
Chris.
It's not
That's
CPI
right,
rate.
Chris.
Yeah.
That's right, Chris.
It's
Now-
compound interest
Yes.
Now, the other thing that's able to happen,
1 minute.
right, creating these extra opportunities. If you go to university today, on average, you will earn over your lifetime $1 million extra. $1 million over your lifetime because of the investment that you've put in your education. Now, what we're asking those people to do, that have the benefit of that going to university, we don't think it should be the workers in Bankstown and Cabramatta that pay for their university course or pay for all of it. So we're asking them to make a slightly larger contribution to that advantage, to that cost of their education, because they will get the benefit back over many, many years to come.
30 seconds.
Okay. Can I just add that to answer the question raised by on the other side? Look, everyone will share the heavy lifting. The high income earner, the government introducing anyone over 180,000 will be pay a debt levy of 2%. Now we don't have to pay this debt if were not the Labour government giving us this big budget deficit that this Liberal government was inherited from. So therefore, everyone sharing the burden. So the $180,000 and above will pay 2%. we are not focusing on the low income or medium income earner. Everyone do the sharing.
Thank you, Paul.
Can I just
Yeah,
quickly
reply,
deal with that?
reply.
And
You got
put
3
it-
minutes. Yeah.
And put it in perspective, it's the 180,000 above will pay a 3% levy for 2 years, and 2 years only. Then it's back to where we are now. But if you're a pensioner, if you're a carer, if you're a family that's on family tax benefit B, if you're a single parent, they are permanent adjustments you're making. So under this budget, not 2 years, and we're going to go back where we were, under this budget, it's setting in stone into the future that the most disadvantaged in our community are going to be treated the harshest. How is that fair? How is that fair?
I wish to add this bit too, okay? Now, you said that the Labor government, or the former Labor government, has put Australia into a very, very bad situation in terms
Correct.
of debt.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is
Glad you agree.
That is rubbish. The reason is 15%. All right.
We got big
Any
bad
young family,
school
myself
hall.
included, any young family, myself included, if you go out and get a mortgage today, okay, our banking system would allow you to loan up to 95% or 80% without paying the extra mortgage insurance. Now that is a standard practice that we're doing in this country, okay? The bank or the government here allowed individual family or young family to own a property when they own debts up to 80%, okay? And as a country like Australia, compared to other economic advanced nation, we're owning 15%, not even 15%. And you say that's a massive
But Toàn,
debt,
can I just say Australia had
a massive,
the fastest growing nation.
that's incorrect.
No,
that's incorrect.
We have the
Yeah.
That's all I wish to say in terms of an example for you to compare. Okay, 15% of debts that are owned by this nation is not a massive debt like what the Liberal is saying.
what we're saying is that we raise the alarm bell. Australia had the fastest debt growing nation. The amount that we spend right now, and we continue to do that. What we talking about? Okay, We escaped from the GFC. Good. However, what about the future? we okay. 2 decades ago, we are in
That's right.
prosperity.
The Labour will fix it up. Labour will fix it up, just like we
Now
did.
we've got $40 billion deficit. Therefore, $23,000 per annum per person.
What was your
is
answer
debt.
to the global financial crisis? What was the Liberals' answer to the
It
global
finished 5
financial
years ago.
crisis?
It finished 5 years ago.
Chris,
the global
What was the
financial
Liberals'
No,
crisis.
we're
Yeah,
still under the
What was the
GFC.
Liberals'
still doing?
suggestion?
Under the GFC.
The answer was they didn't have one. They did not have an approach. They wanted to sit on their hands and wait to see how bad this
Yeah, but
got.
Chris,
Okay,
the
yes.
amount that they spend on pink bag, school hall,
That's it.
all the waste, all the handout.
Hey,
Now we
why
have
is
to
it
pay.
waste? Why is it a waste?
No, it is a waste because
No,
all
it's
the
not a waste.
handout, now
Look, to
we
tell you
have
the
to
truth,
pay.
in my council right now, okay, there are at least 5 or 6 schools because of the program. They have a school hall now. Okay, so it is a good program.
No, but
It
did
is
you
a
know
good
there was a
program. It
law?
gives jobs to the economy
which
and it
school-
gives facility to
which
the
schools
schools.
don't you
Or
think
just-
they should have got their school halls?
It's
You
not,
tell-
it's the
which
cost.
school?
It's the cost.
No, which school?
They can't.
Which
The
you
cost
take
of
it-
overrun. The cost
Oh,
of
that's
overrun
right. You
is
support
what
all
I'm
your
talking about.
schools.
Chris,
Can I just interrupt this heated debate right here? What I'm hearing so far from this side is
Your
spend,
school's
spend,
okay though,
spend.
wasn't it?
My school's fantastic, but our hall got ripped off because the hall was worth like 200,
Right.
but then we ended up paying
Why
500,000-600,000
can't you
for
do
it.
public work
You
with
know what I'm saying?
$200,000?
So I feel it's a
That's
rip-off.
rubbish.
How much
No.
I feel
Hang
that
on,
the Labour
hang on,
Party
hang on. You
for
went to a
GFC,
Catholic
they were
school.
giving too much money away.
You weren't ripped off.
All right.
I read this situation because you guys were giving too much
Well,
money away.
thank you, guys. I think you
Nah.
both made your point quite clear there. I'd like to move on to another interesting issue which has been raised by the audience. That is women's rights. So this time I'd like to have Labour side first. Women's rights. I suppose the question is to deal with what does the Labour Party, what is the policies of the Labour Party to advance the interests of women and to, I guess, to advance equality of opportunities insofar as women are concerned.
Well, if you want to look at the women's rights and the way women are represented, just look on the front bench of the Labour Party in Parliament. Unfortunately, in Cabinet, there's only one woman on the Liberal side in Cabinet. So look, we have a position that obviously in having equality, and you can see that in just the way we run our parliamentary team. One of the issues that's going to come up here, though, is going to be the issue about paid parental leave. And with something I also want to put in perspective, the biggest issue for us in Western Sydney is in terms of childcare. Now, when childcare is being cut in favour of paid parental leave for the richest areas of our community, and I know this is going to be an issue because people say, well, why should people be able to actually have a baby than they go on minimum rates as they do at the moment? But why should people in Cabramatta, a family in Cabramatta, have a baby where the average income there is $35,000? So the child in Cabramatta worth a little bit over $15,000 to a child in maybe Joe Hockey's electorate, where the average income is about $100,000, are going to get paid $50,000. A kid's a kid. We think if we all believe, and I think hopefully across the political divide, we believe in some equality insofar as every child has the capacity to go on to do anything they want. Now, how are we going to put a value on one child in North Sydney being worth $50,000 to a child born in Cabramatta being worth $30,000? This is hypocrisy writ large.
Look, I just want to add in terms of Labour policy, we also have a policy in place where the party encourage females to join the rank within council, within state and federal.
Is there still a policy of guarantee 30% women in winnable seats? Is that still a policy of the Labour Party?
It's approximately that's a policy. So you can tell or you can see from our policy from the grassroots is that we encourage female to enter into leadership role and into a winnable seat for council, state and federal.
Thank you. You're this side.
I'll go on the paid parental leave subject. Firstly, we need to identify the problem that we have in this nation. Our birth rate, our fertility rate is currently 1.87 children for every female. So what that means, we need a replacement rate, we need a birth rate over 2, otherwise we're declining as a population, we're actually dying as a people. Now, one of the big issues that we have of why many women are not having kids today is because when they're in work and living in Sydney, you often find that it's both the husband and the wife that need to be in the workforce to pay the mortgage, to pay the costs of running the car, to pay the costs of living. They simply cannot afford for one of the partners to take time off work to have a child. So what the Coalition's proposal is, that you will actually be able to get your replacement wage for 6 months up to $100,000 limit as the maximum threshold of what your wage would be. You will get that paid 6 months by the government. That will be funded by an additional company tax on the largest companies of the nation, who are already paying a very large paid parental leave. Now, Chris talks about unfairness. Currently, the current system is unfair because there are many people that work in public servants, and actually probably staff in our parliamentary offices have much more generous paid parental leave schemes than someone working in Cabramatta or Bankstown. So the Coalition's plan is to bring it back where you will get your replacement wage. So why should, if you are going off 6 months to have a child, we think you should be paid in the same way that you are paid sick pay, that you are paid holiday leave? Because this is one of the ways we believe will actually increase the fertility rate of the country. Because if we don't, in years down the track, with our ageing population, we're going to be in very big trouble. Now, it's very easy to throw barbs and political barbs at the paid parental leave scheme and say you're giving money to rich people and make these things about it. But if we stay on the track that we are going, we are heading for a serious crisis with the ageing population that we're doing. This is one step that we are doing to try and address this problem.
1 minute.
Okay, I think the Liberal recognize the need to bring back the mothers back to the workforce after maternity leave. So therefore, it's an utmost important to give the support. Now, that's what the Liberals all are. The Liberals provide support, provide incentive for mothers who have young children go back to the workforce. Now, obviously, some critics saying, "Oh, we're subsidizing middle class." No, you're not. We're subsidizing family. We're subsidizing family in order to assist them go back to the workforce.
Reply. This side.
I could feel that, you know, the value of the Labour Party is to give the fair go to all people. And in that regard, I can feel that in the Labour Party, we have more Labour MP female, also in the front bench, also in the back bench. And I remember last year, by the name of the same person, the same name with me, Mr. Andrew Nguyễn. He stand for the Karamata suburb, the MP for federal. But some people say he wasn't allowed to attend seminar in the public place during the election. So what I could feel that the Labour Party very much give a fair go to all people, especially people from the migrant background, of the non-English speaking background, and also women. That's it.
One minute.
Look, just
to continue.
Look, and I must acknowledge that the Liberal Party did run a candidate against in the former election for state seat of Cabramatta. You recall Davy, and I think she took Labor down from about a 22% seat down to 20%. So she got a phenomenal swing against her. You would have thought that she had done enough for the Liberal Party to recognise that, to give her another chance, or to put her in the upper house in New South Wales. Now, so much for a person who actually made a 20% gain on a Western Sydney seat. Not that I want her to win the seat, but recognising what she did, and she can't get the party to even give her another go.
Well, if we want to get into internal political from the Liberal point of view, can I address the issue? I'll answer that question for you, Chris Hayes. Davy had an opportunity. Head office gave her an opportunity to come down to represent Cabramatta. Our campaign was very hard, in the sense that Cabramatta has been dominated by the Labor Party for the last 20, 30 years. So it was an uphill battle for the Liberal Party, but we acknowledge that females also plays a very important role in our society. So that's why we let Davy out to represent the Liberal Party in Cabramatta. However, we lost out only by 10 or 15%, which was a great success in terms of the marketing and the whole strategy, what we used in trying to combat the Labor Party there. But for you to turn and say that the Liberal Party, we don't support females, I think that's wrong.
Because you didn't put it in the upper house.
We didn't put it upper house. We didn't put it upper house because there's a lot of internal issues that I can't discuss or disclose here. But there are issues as to why she was endorsed. You would understand.
It's all about differently on our side.
Factions and all that. You would understand all that. So to come back to the issues about the female, can I just say that the Liberal Party has a very generous paid maternity leave scheme where they encourage females to actually take some time off, say 6 months, to spend quality time with their kids before they go back to work.
But at $22 billion a year, let's lose sight of that. Yeah. We're making cuts everywhere else, but this is $22 billion.
That's how we feel. That's how we feel how important the females are. That's why we're willing to jeopardize and put a lump sum there to support the females.
Also, can you also address the point that Andrew raised, the treatment of candidates of, I guess, the migrant background? I think he refers specifically to Andrew Nguyen. And there was also a guy in Greenway, I can't remember his name was.
Greenway.
I think
James
Diaz, yes.
Well, that is an internal, I guess that is a decision of the head office.
So what you're saying, it did happen?
That is happened.
What happened?
We had
blocking ethnic candidates for them not to interfere with local media and attend functions and so on during the election.
We had 3 Liberal candidates whose name was Nguyen. If they were all successful, the most common surname in the Liberal side of politics sitting in Parliament would be Nguyen if they were successful. So we give plenty of opportunity to people across to suggest that there's some say that the coalition doesn't give opportunities to people with different backgrounds. It's completely and utterly false.
Can I just add on the issue of women in Liberal Party? We got 2 bishops in Liberal Party. One is a foreign minister, and the other one is Speaker of the House. One of the highest position only in the Parliament.
Only one in cabinet.
Yeah, that's. I think you both have covered it quite comprehensively. I'd like to move on to another issue, which is very also. I think of extreme concern or of great concern to many members of the community, which is the issue of asylum seekers and offshore processing. So if I could just let you guys, Labour side, start on that issue. Chris.
Well, obviously this is a very vexed question. It's very a difficult one for the community. The issue about offshore processing is designed to actually discourage people from being able to actually come to and make claims directly in Australia. Offshore processing is supported by both sides of the Parliament, largely on the basis that we don't want people making that dreadful and risky journey trying to travel to Australia by boat, only to find that sometimes, as we found out, over 1,300 people died at sea before the last election. They're things we don't want to see replicated. And the other thing, I think there's some commonality amongst both sides of the Parliament. We don't want to give anything that gives rise to the people who are making money out of this vile trade of people trafficking and people smuggling. So the people smugglers is a vile criminal activity. They're feasting off people, very vulnerable people, and we don't want to make. We want to make sure that we close that end of their trade. Meanwhile, in terms of asylum seekers, don't forget when we were in government, we increased the number of refugee intakes from 13,700 to 20,000 to ensure that people would go to and register with the UNHCR and be accredited as being refugees. That's now been dropped back by this government back to 13,000. So we have less people coming into the country. But the issue, I think that is common between us, is the issue about offshore processing.
Anything to add?
All I would like to add is that the current issue about asylum seekers, I think the Liberal government has taken a very ineffective and strong stand or inhumane option to turn the boat around as the way they did. And all I would like to refer to is the High Court last week rejected the action that the current government are doing, turning the Tamil people back to Sri Lanka without giving them any opportunity to proper processing.
Reply.
Look, as a country, we need to protect our borders, and the country do need to decide whoever we want to take onto this country. So we have to stop the boat. We have to stop the boat because simply it's about Australia taking refugees. We're taking 30,750 per year. We never reduce refugee intake. However, these people jump in the queue. So what we're saying, we protect our borders, we stop the boat, we stop people smuggling trade. And we have to do it the hard way. It seems hard, but we protect our borders. But what we're also trying to do is we are taking refugees from the camps. We are taking refugees from Africa. You know, all of the country having, all the war-torn country, Australia never reduced refugee intake. So a lot of people saying, oh, look, Australian, inhumane, all that, but we are doing to protect the border. That's simply what it's all about.
You know, currently, roughly figure speaking, there's about 14,500 desperate refugees people around the world that's seeking refugees in Australia. Okay, and the problem is that every single time this economic refugee paid away to come to Australia, someone that has actually been approved by United Nations to be accepted to Australia will lose their spot to come to Australia. Now, the Liberal, we are not against immigration and we're not against refugees. In fact, I am a refugee. When I first came to Australia, I was running away from the North Communist regime with a shirt and a bloody pants and a pair of thongs on my feet. And that's all I had. But these days, have you noticed, the refugee that arrived to Australia, they bloody have a mobile phone, a suitcase, and they ring 000 to get assistance. Now, to me, that is not a refugee, that's economic refugee.
Any reply on this
I
side?
believe that in the last few weeks, there are some boats arriving from Sri Lanka, coming from the civil war between Sri Lanka and the Tamil. And those people coming from the country, not from the third party land like Indonesia. And I believe Australia is a signatory of the International Refugee Convention, and a lot of international organizations raised their voice that Australia is against the convention that we as a country has signed, and that is the concern of a lot of human rights groups. I would like to raise
I would like to raise this. I disagree with Paul totally about jumping the queue. I think such comment is alright for people in the public, but for us involving in politics, in mainstream politics like us, it's using that sort of word is inappropriate. Taking our experience, for example, if we didn't jump on the boat 20, 30 years ago, if my parent didn't take me on the boat 20, 30 years ago, are we able to get to a free country like Australia to start a new life?
No, this
okay?
is all.
So how can you say we jumped the queue?
It's all different circumstances.
No. It's not. It's not. Okay, the Tamil Tiger, for example, if they are staying in their village, in their country now, where's the queue? Where's the queue for them? So if you're saying jump in the queue, I totally disagree on that. Okay. One more thing. I'm not sure if how good you are with math. You are an accountant now. I can see that you should be good with math. The Labor government introduced 16,000 refugees in a year intake. When the Liberal comes in, they reduce it to 13. And you call that's not a drop, a decrease. I totally disagree with that.
Reply?
Just firstly, yes, I understand a policy of turning the boats around sometimes seem inhumane. But what is really inhumane when 1,300 people drown at sea? And that's what was happening under the policies of the previous Labor government. So yes, it's a tough policy of turning the boats around. But this is not an easy situation. In 6 months, we know we haven't had a boat arrive on Christmas Island or on our shores. But most important, we haven't had one death at sea. Now, we set a limit in this country about how many refugees and how many people, migrants, we come to Australia. This year, it'll be close to 200,000 people will get the opportunity from overseas to come and live in Australia. We are all for migrants in this party, in the coalition. We want to see refugees come. But we can't contract out the selection process to people who pay people smugglers. We have to use the United Nations process. That process is there for a particular reason. If we go soft, if we go back and we think, you take one boat in and this leads to the disaster that saw 13,000 deaths at sea. This is something that's a hard stand, and the coalition continues to take it because we need to keep our borders under control. We need to keep confidence in our immigration policy in this country, to keep the harmony in our society that we've seen for many years. And we want to see that those numbers of refugees continue to come into Australia, but through the approved processes, through the United Nations processes, not through being selected or paying 10 grand to a people smuggler.
Or what happens under the Rudd government? When he came into the power, he stopped the offshore processing center. So what happened then is every single day we had 2 boats arrive. 2 boats arrive every single day. So what's going to happen in 6 months, 1 year, few years down the track? What happened? We can't protect our borders. We cannot have people just coming into the country and knowing that there are people smugglers there. People pay thousands of dollars to come to the country. Well, that's what I mean by jumping the queue. Well, that's what happened.
Can I just make 2 points?
Reply, yes.
Just 2 points. This is a very, very vexed issue. It's a very emotive issue for everyone involved on both sides of the department. I think the view is that we do need to do what's necessary to stop people dying at sea, and we try to do our best for looking after genuine refugees. But the fact remains that under Labor's position, of which was 20,000 refugees per year, that's now been dropped back. It has dropped back to 13,000. So that's just a fact. The other thing, the big change, and Craig made the point about being pro-migrant, and we're a migrant-based nation. But for an electorate like mine, and which is not a rich electorate, for this government to under a very deft hand to cut all contributory visas. So for visas to get people to come in as carers, or visas to get people to come in as sole remaining relatives, or parents, to get your parents to this country, it won't be just waiting 6 to 8 years to get people here any longer. What this will mean that you will have to pay as a contributory visa, and as I understand it, will be up to anything up to about 125,000. That will put it beyond the reach of just about everyone in my electorate. And my electorate is very much a migrant-based electorate. So this is something which is, it came in just after the budget when everyone was talking about other things, and this just sort of just floated through with no fanfare, no coming up saying we're going to do it, and just almost at the death of night, this just gets floated through, and it impacts on an electorate like mine, which is predominantly made up of migrants.
Great.
I'd quickly like to respond to that. The queue of the contributory visa that Chris was talking about was 15 years long. To tell someone that, yes, you can apply for a relative to come in, but you go on the end, but let's take your money for your visa application. Oh, by the way, there's a 15-year wait. That's unconscionable from the government. So yes, we have cut that because it's simply untenable to put more people on the end of that 15-year queue. We want to try and reduce that queue, and unfortunately, Chris, we simply in this country cannot give visas to everyone. We'd like to give more, but that is something we've had
but
limits on things.
125,000,
well, we've cut it. Well, Chris, what's the point of putting someone on a queue that's 15 years long?
But you tell people in working class electorates that you just can't get your relatives to come to Australia.
Jump on the end of a queue for 15 years, Chris, and to get them to pay the money for the visa, I think is unconscionable.
Well, this is targeted migrant-based communities. This is squarely targeted, and it's not 15 years, by the way. It's anything between 8 and 10. And people in working class areas, the ones I represent, sometimes that's the only option because they don't have a spare $125,000 to hand over to a government.
Sure, I'm sure in 10 or 15 years or 8 years, however long, but you acknowledge that's a very long time. Once that queue gets down, I'm sure this will be opened up again, but you just can't whack people, give them false hope by telling them you've got 10 to 15 years to wait.
Thank you. I think it's a topic that has been argued very well by both sides. I would like now to move on to a very important topic. I think it's a topic of great concern to many members of the Vietnamese community, which is the peace, trade, social, and the security issues in the East Sea and the relationship between Australia, Japan, China, and Vietnam. Greg, I noticed that the Japanese Prime Minister recently visited the country and had a speech in Parliament, as I understand it. And there appears to have been some significant change in terms of posture. I'm not quite sure whether that there has been some significant cooperation in terms of security engagement between Australia and Japan. And Foreign Minister Julie Bishop has been making quite significant pronouncements. Those things like standing up to China and that sort of stuff. So what is the government's position in relation to the current dispute in the East Sea?
Firstly, you are correct. It's not only a dispute between China and Vietnam. It's also a dispute between China and the Philippines, between China and parts of Malaysia, and between China and Taiwan, and between China and Japan. We are hoping that these disputes can be settled through international negotiation. But the best way that we can all get on in our region and live together is to have our economies integrated as much as we can, to have interpersonal visits between people coming and going. This is why one of the plans we've had is the Reverse Colombo plan, where Australian students get to go and live and study in foreign countries. We will also want more students from China, from Japan, from other parts of Southeast Asia to come and study and learn in Australia. That's ultimately the way we can overcome these areas of conflict, integrate our economies, integrate our personal relationships, so we'll all realise that we are part of one region. And that is what we're strengthening with Japan. We're trying to strengthen our trade relations. Both sides are reducing our tariff barriers, so there'll be greater two-way trade between the two countries. Both sides are reducing so we can get more people travelling. In fact, the last words of the Japanese Prime Minister's speech in Parliament, he said he wants to see more young Australians travelling to Japan, and he wants to see more young Japanese people travelling to Australia. And that's what we need, not only with Japan, but with China and everywhere else, because that's ultimately the best guarantee that we have of our security in the region.
Anything to add on this side?
Can I just add that I think Australia is trying to have a closer tie with the Japan and US, and I guess China is our trading partner. Japan is our trading partner. They're both equally important in terms of trade. However, we always stand up with China. Should China be trying to be aggressive to us, we will stand up. However, the important thing is that a free trade agreement between Japan and Australia would allow both countries would promote trade. We would reduce our tariff so that we can export more beef, we export more wines and all the product that we have. However, on the other side, the Japan would reduce their tariff so that they can export more cars to us. So really, we would increase a two-way trade between those two countries.
Chris, I noticed that the Xinhua, I think the news agency, which is the mouthpiece of the China's Communist Party, has made some negative comments about Prime Minister Abbot's comment with respect to with respect to the Japanese soldiers during World War II. I also noticed that I think your deputy leader, Tanya Plibersek, has raised a concern that has been a bipartisan position for Australia when it comes to a relationship with China, but we're not sure whether that is going to be the case. So what's your position there?
Well, look, I'm aware of the overseas report from the Chinese media agency, but I'm also aware of what the RSL had to say only today. And sometimes you can't just gloss over what was in our recent history. And one of the big issues about China, I think, is the Prime Minister Abe's visit to the Ashihai Shrine and rekindling some of those issues, particularly, I know it's not only the Chinese are upset by that, but also the Koreans and probably anyone else who is engaged in the Second World War. But just the other aspect about the South China Sea, or as the Vietnamese refer to as the East Sea, and which is essentially about the Spratly and Paracel Islands. Regrettably, things are certainly hotting up there with China moving to have some physical dominance in the area by putting oil rigs there and protecting them by frigates. To date, there's only one country that's actually taken some step to appeal, legally appeal against China's actions in that regard, and it's not Vietnam. It is the Philippines, who have already lodged their application in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So they, and we would encourage all countries, and there's 6 of them, who are laying some claim to that South China Sea, to actually do the same. And regrettably, in Vietnam, it's not the Vietnamese government standing up and asserting their sovereignty in respect to the Spratly and Paracel Islands. It's some very, very young but very courageous individuals, such as Nguyen Phuong Nguyen and and Nguyen Ca. Young people, 23, 26-year-old, who gets arrested for protesting about this and gets sentenced to 6 and 8 years jails respectively. I've got to say, I still stand in awe about these young patriots who are prepared to stand up because they believe, passionately believe in the future of Vietnam. And I think that's pretty significant.
Yes, I noticed though, I think today or earlier or yesterday, the United States Senate have passed a resolution calling for China to remove the oil rig from that particular region. I'm just wondering, Greg, whether that move by the United States Senate will have any influence or impact on the thinking of the Australian government.
Look, we'd hope that China would take heed of international opinion. China can't be isolationist about this. It's a dispute that involves many nations around our region. And the best way, as I said, the best way forward to peace has to be through negotiation. Each nation has to give a little bit. There has to be negotiations between the parties. And we in Australia, we also have an obligation. Sometimes we have to be firm on these issues. And I believe in this issue we should stand firm with our partners in the USA.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
On this issue, I agree that on international issues like this, it need to be negotiated by the countries. But given the current condition in Vietnam or the current political system in Vietnam, I don't think the Vietnamese Communist government have the strength and the power or the people's interest to negotiate with the Chinese Communist government. So I think as a role of international, the international community, country like Australia and the US need to see that and need to influence or negotiate in a way or put pressure on China in a way where the outcome is better and for Vietnam and for the people of Vietnam.
Yeah. Can I say something there? This particular issues with China is a very sensitive issue that's affecting our Vietnamese community, not just in Australia but worldwide. And I feel this is something that our community, we need to have a chat with both political parties and see if we all can get together and find a diplomatic solution and get China on the table to negotiate. Because at the moment, China's flexing their muscle and they've been such a bully. And I feel that if we don't do something now, then there might be longer consequences that will going to be affected Vietnam down the track. So I feel in this case, I feel that both governments really need to sit down together and help Vietnam solve these issues.
Chris,
I'm also concerned about the issue, and I consult many people in the Labour Party, and they confirm with me that the Labour Party, that I agree. Australian shouldn't take side in the dispute in the South China Sea, but Australia would like to see every party to the negotiation should negotiate peacefully all together, and shouldn't any side of that shouldn't take unilateral action regarding in the taking action in that area. But I also, focus and stress to the Labour leaders that based on the past, we will look back at the history. China was colonized by the Western country for 100 years, and even the Japanese colonized China for about 10 years, and in the Peking even about 300 Chinese people get killed because of the Japanese. And Chinese people, the psychology of Chinese people, it seems to me that they want to retaliate. And at the moment, they claim about 80% of the Southeast China Sea as their own territory because of some reason. But I don't mean that the Chinese government, stay there. If they occupy the whole 80%, they go in come forward. It's like Germany behavior during the early of the Second World War. If we can repeat the lesson, Germany at the early of the Second World War, Germany claimed some territory surrounding Germany, and at that time, England and France were too scared to touch and to confront Germany, and even the U.S., England and France keep quiet, and with the hope that if we don't touch Germany, Germany don't touch us. but the result you would know.
Thank you.
So the Chinese government today, I would think it's the same. If we don't prevent, stop her, I love Chinese people, but I like Chinese to mix up with the other country peaceful. But I don't like Chinese people to retaliate everything happened in the past, because the past is
You need to
over.
wind
You
up.
can't
Yeah,
control
Andrew.
it.
Yeah. Thank you. Correct. There seems to be a sense that Australians somehow feel afraid to upset the Chinese. I read somewhere that we don't want to be too insensitive to the Chinese, and I recall, I think earlier this year or last year, the Chinese foreign minister in his meeting with our counterpart was very undiplomatic, to say the least, when he confronted Julia Bishop, rebuking her publicly in front of television camera because Australians had taken a stand against the Chinese declaration of air defence identification zone.
Well,
is that? Do you feel that there is a sense that our government, or both persuasions, don't want to upset the Chinese?
You are correct, and we have taken that strong stance. Julie Bishop, in one of the first decisions that she made as Foreign Minister, took that strong stance against China over air rights and air traffic flows. And she was absolutely correct to do so. We need to be very careful, as we've been said by other members of the panel. Appeasement we've shown in history never works. And if you show weakness in one area, it leads to weakness in other areas. I think it's combined with all the nations in the region need to work together on this issue, rather than just one nation making statements by themselves. It needs to be a regional solution and regional agreements.
Chris, do you feel like this is area of strategic importance to Australia, relationship with China? Is it going to be something that will continue to enjoy bipartisan support?
Look, our relationship with China will continue to have bipartisan support, as our relationship with Japan and the United States. In terms of the issue about the South China Sea, I'd like to actually compare that to what's occurring in the East China Sea. And there's a contest there as well between China, Japan and Taiwan. Whilst China hasn't agreed to it, but Taiwan and Japan have agreed to, whilst they haven't resolved sovereignty in their claims, they've agreed to share in economic development of the area. So that's actually progressing. I think Mayor Ma from Taiwan was the one who initiated it, but that seems to be progressing quite well and shows that parties, even though they have not resolved the issue of outright sovereignty, can actually work together in terms of exploiting the economic potential of the area for the gains of both those countries. So perhaps there's something like that to be gained from this, but it's not helpful when some unilateral stance is taken to deposit a couple of oil rigs there and guard those oil rigs with military ships.
Thank you. I think we've also covered that area. I'd like to move on to another topic which hasn't been raised by the audience, but I think is maybe of importance to a number of members of our community, which is the issue of ethics and honesty in public office, and particularly in political office. I mean, recently we've had quite a few hearings at ICAC, which has brought up some unsavoury aspects of political life, and unfortunately some of it does involve the Western Sydney, the western parts of Sydney. So first I'd like to get your views on this side. How do you say to young Australians who aspire to have a career in politics that it's a noble cause, that everything is clean, there's no hidden agenda, there's no backstabbing, there's no corruption and all that sort of stuff? What would you say to those young people?
Can I firstly answer that question for you? Politics, we all know, is a dirty game, but oh, bloody hell.
I don't know, you tell me. I'm not a politician.
If you talk to any minister, they will tell you they have knives in the back, left, right and centre. That is the nature of politics. Now, that does discourage a lot of honest, decent, good people like ourselves, especially young Vietnamese, to get in politics. But at the end of the day, I think if a person has the right, genuine skill set, has a heart to actually put hands up to go into public life, to serve their community, to look after the community, then that is what matters most. They should just ignore what's out there in the media about corruptions, about embezzlement. I mean, we see that all the time on TV, but don't take that too hard. I mean, not everyone in politics is corrupt or is bad. That's my say to that.
Well, can I just say that, look, it's very, both sides politics. It involves ICAC in recent days. It's very sad to see that, you know, a number of ministers or government ministers or a premier have to resign over the incident. Now, I guess, as what you say, Davy, look, this is only the incident. It happened, but we don't take it as it's politics. So it happened because, you know, there are some individuals decided to take the action that they shouldn't have. This is against public interest. But I guess the old politicians, I believe, do work very hard, and they work hard, but they don't get paid all that much. But I think they do with passion, and they love what they do, and that's my view in terms of when I see politicians, I feel sorry for them because, you know, look like Chris Hay, he attend every single Friday and Saturday night with all the Vietnamese function, you know. So this, and great, you probably do the same exactly with your electorate. But I think the most important thing that you are serving the community, and with ICACs and, you know, with all the things that happen, we will see that, you know, people have to resign, all of that. I think this is part of life, I guess. Yeah.
Great.
Well, I think we've had a good process in Australia, and there will always be people acting improperly on both sides of politics. I think the important thing that if a young person's thinking about going into politics, it should be because they actually believe in something, not that they want to get their hands on the levers of government for some sort of financial advantage. And we've seen how strict our process is here in New South Wales, with the Premier resigning over a bottle of wine that he mistakenly failed to declare. I think that shows the process is working, that it weeds out the bad apples and lets everyone else get on with doing what's the best for the country.
This side?
I'll say a few word first. Look, the way I see it is politics is not dirty, but the people, or there are some people in politics are dirty. So,
I agree with you.
You need to be transparent. It's not just that, but then, you know, people, they are good and bad. So unfortunately, there are some, and being involved in politics, it's a public life, and you know, any movement within politicians, it happened to be captured on the mainstream media, and that's part of life. But you know, if anyone out there who would like a career in politics or would like to take part in politics, I recommended that they should take part, because, as I always said, it's great in this country. There is a great system. We can vote, but vote it doesn't stop there. Be involved, be a policy maker, and be an influential in government and the opposition and so on.
For me, I would think that politics is the way you serve the community. For example, I started doing the treasurer for the Vietnamese community for 4 years, and at the time, the president asked me to do some service for the sporting activity for the Vietnamese community. And I go out to organize some soccer tournament, the tennis tournament for the Vietnamese community. And I think that at that time, we need leaders from the community to do something good for the community. We always have a lot of people in Kalamata, Bang South, but we lack of the people who go there and do in some community activity for the whole community. And I mean that every community will need leader. Every community will need a board member in order to regulate. Otherwise, the community go apart because then everyone have no chance to come together. So I think, you know, if it's young people, if you think that politics is somewhere you serve the community, you contribute, because when you come here, you earn a lot from the community. You got a free education. One way, when you finish university, you need to do something to serve back to the community. That's the way I think.
Chris?
Look, I'm pretty confident in my 9 years in politics that all the people I associate with on either side of the parliament are all there for the right reasons. They're there to represent their community. They're there to try and do something good for their community and make a difference. And it's just that we all don't think the same way. But I think the aims and the ambitions are just are still as honest. It's regrettable that you're going to get bad apples, and ICAC at least can give the community confidence that there's an agency out there that's looking to weed out bad apples. But, you know, we see it in the police force, we see it in various other areas, and indeed, you probably see it in the legal profession as well, that some people have been stood down. But look, at the end of the day, I think we've got to believe in democracy. The alternative to that is not great, And we ultimately, we all have the test of going back to our electorates and seeking re-endorsement, and a community knows when someone's not working for them, and a community will deal with them. So we do have a check and balance there. But look, it is regrettable and very embarrassing for parties and all that sort of stuff, but the likes of Eddie O'Beid and Chris Harcher and all the rest of it, it has given a very bad name to people in public life. There's no question about that. But look, all I could leave you with on this is that the people I see in federal politics are there to do the right thing for their communities.
Thank you, Chris. We have to wind up, and but before we do that, I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds. So I'm going to start off at the end of the panel, Paul.
I'm a liberal by blood. We believe in free enterprise, freedom of choices. People can make choices. Lean government, government that provide incentive, opportunity people to prosper. The nation needs economic growth to prosper. So the government will support incentive, support small businesses that our nation needs to sustain our free or access to healthcare, education, and welfare.
Thank you, Andrew.
What I would think that the Labour Party, its philosophy and its value fits perfect 100% for the Vietnamese community, especially in the low-income suburb of Fairfield, Bankstown. I would think that the government, the Labour Party, will give reform, will reapply the Gonski reforms, which encourage children from our community to participate more and have a better level of education in high school, in primary school, and the good and a good basic step in doing university.
Thank you.
That's what I would think I should support.
Thank you, Davy.
I think at the end of the day, with the Liberal, we try, I guess the end of the day is to be a very stable government, and our aim is to always look 2 or 3 steps ahead to look after Australian citizens. But so also on top of that, I think that we are all come from different countries, but at the end of the day, we are all Australians, and we all should work together as one.
Toàn.
I just would like to add, first of all, thanks for everyone being on the panel and allow me to be in this forum. Being a Labour member, I think it's an opportunity to contribute. And as I said earlier, it's the role of the government, councils, to have policy plans where it incorporate benefits to the whole of the community, specifically those are in need or in need support of the bodies like council or government to assist them to move forward. And I think Labour does have those values to assist those in the community as well as broadly to all Australians. Thank you.
The best way that we can look after those less well off is having a strong economy. And the best way to have that strong economy is to provide economic growth and to give opportunity, especially to people in small business, because they've always been the backbone of this nation and the drivers of the economy. We also have to make sure that we are leaving this place. Every politician has a job to make sure that our children and our grandchildren inherit the country in a better shape than we inherited from our forefathers. But we cannot do that if we're going to burden them with debt. Already, if we keep spending money that we're not raising in taxes and go into deficit every year, we are simply stealing from our children. Already, we have to pay $1 billion every month in interest payments. And 70% of that money actually flows out of the country because we borrowed that money from overseas. The steps we are taking, yes, some of those steps are going to hurt and some of those seem harsh measures. But to do nothing, to just keep going down the path that we are, we will end up with a situation where the average family of 4 in 10 years will have a debt of $100,000 and the interest cost on that will be $5,000 a year. So every family of 4 will be $5,000 a year worse off. That's less money we have to spend for health, less money for education, less money for aged care, unless we try and get the budget back to try and get rid of the deficit, get the budget back into surplus and slowly pay that debt off.
Thank you. Chris, last words.
think, Tony, I think what comes out of today's discussion is the difference between Liberal and Labor. Some said that what was the difference, or questioned the difference before last election. I think everyone on that side has talked about business. Everyone on this side has talked about people. We represent people, particularly the most vulnerable people in our community. We want to make sure that we give young people an opportunity to progress. We want to make sure that they have the ability to get to university and to maximise their potential and what they will contribute for our nation into the future, as well as being able to get to TAFE colleges, to be able to provide the skill base for building our economy for the future. But it also means that we've got to look after pensioners. We've got to look after families that are in need. You can't simply permanently discard those on the basis that we want to actually retire debt and we want to do something for business. We are a community. One of the things that really is, quite frankly, the very essence of us being Australians, whether it's Vietnamese Australians or whatever, we're Australians. It is that we look after one another, we protect one another, and we give each other opportunities for the future.
On that note, I have to conclude, and please put your hands together for the panel members. Thank you very much. Our program has concluded, and thank you for watching, and we hope that we're going to get to see you again next time. Thank you.
Well done. Thanks.